So when Father Jeff, our provincial director, called and asked me on the phone if I would be interested in helping with Sundays at St. Charles, because today is the first Sunday at St. Charles, this program, I thought he wanted me to scoop ice cream. Imagine my surprise when it was something entirely different, but sweet nonetheless. All right, now on to the homily. Well, you know, folks, church feuds can be quite common, but when the pastor and the choir get into it, you better watch out. And one week, the minister preached on commitment and how you should dedicate yourselves to service. Well, the music director then led the choir in the song, "I Shall Not Be Moved." Well, the next Sunday, the minister preached on giving and tithing and how we should give gladly to the work of the Lord. The choir director then led the song, "Jesus Paid It All." The next Sunday, the minister preached on gossiping and how we should always watch our tongues. Well, the hymn that Sunday was, "I Love to Tell the Story." The minister became so disgusted over the situation, the next Sunday he told the congregation that he was thinking about resigning and asked for their prayers as he waited on the answer. Well, just then the choir got up and sang, "Oh, Why Not Tonight?" Well, if that's not enough, folks, when the preacher resigned the next week, he told the church that Jesus had led him there and Jesus was taking him away. And the choir then sang, "What a friend we have in Jesus." Where do we find these priests? I mean, really, you know? Indeed, where two or more are gathered, there will be conflict. So, how might today's gospel on conflict and reconciliation be useful for us in some kind of way? Well, the gospel presents what we might call a culturally conditioned approach for reconciling offender and offended, sinner and sinny, if you will. And this particular pastoral praxis is only found in Matthew's gospel. And it presents Jesus' instruction for how to handle pain caused by interpersonal conflict within a church context. So we might wonder, might this approach be useful in church circles today? Beyond church circles today, let's consider the 3 steps. The first step that is in the gospel, only in Matthew's gospel, is fairly simple and straightforward. The person who has been offended first approaches the offender in private. Now, notice who takes the initiative here. It's the offended. She doesn't wait for the offender to apologize. Might not ever happen. It gives the offender a lot of power, too. Notice, too, the setting for this encounter. It's private. And we might read between the lines a little and imagine an attitude of respect from the offended, which is probably quite hard after being hurt and being offended in some kind of way. The stated purpose of this meeting, according to the gospel, is to gain your brother or sister. And the implication is that the offense has resulted in the loss of a sibling in the faith. We've lost a brother or sister in the faith. We've lost someone very important in this community of faith, this church. And that's why reconciliation and healing are the desired outcomes. But what happens if the offender won't repent? What happens if the offender won't be reconciled? Well, then one moves to stage 2. And the second movement brings one or two others, that is, sisters and brothers in the faith community, into dialogue or to confront the offender. And the word confront here is front to front, face to face. It doesn't suggest aggressiveness or what have you. It's face to face encounter and to serve as a witness. Again, we might imagine a respectful attitude at this point in the encounter as we kind of read between the lines a little bit. Now, if the sinner still does not listen and repent, still does not apologize according to the gospel, then the situation is then reported to the entire church. That's the third step. But what happens if the offender still refuses to listen, even when the community speaks as a whole? Then expulsion from the community is the only option according to the text. And this isn't intended to be punishment, but it seems like the only way the community can possibly be repaired is to remove the offender or the offenders. So, those are the three pastoral steps Matthew's Jesus proposes for respectfully challenging a sister or brother in the church who hurts another person. Now we know, all too sadly, that world history is filled with acts of people hurting other people on all kinds of levels. Even within living memory, many have seen the killing fields of Cambodia, the wholesale slaughter of Stalin's iron-fisted regime over Russia, and the genocide of Rwanda. We've learned that once we are taught to demonize those we hate, then any single act can then be justified. In the death camps of Nazi Germany, we discovered that one can be raised on the beautiful poetry of Rilke, the prose of Goethe, the breathtakingly beautiful compositions of Bach, and the moving operas of Wagner, yet also use the finest tools of human understanding in the attempt to systematically wipe people out. It is often the case that people hurt other people out of their own unhealed pain. I know that certainly has rung true throughout my life at different times. We're not responsible for the injury done to us, but we are responsible for what we do with it. Do we hurt others out of our own unhealed hurt? Do we perpetuate the cycle of violence in word and action? Are we aware of our sinfulness and what we have done and what we have failed to do? Archbishop Desmond Tutu knew about forgiveness through the daring act of helping lead South Africa through truth and reconciliation after the end of apartheid. And this involved thousands of people sharing their suffering and the perpetrators and government asking them for forgiveness. Tutu said, quote, "Forgiveness does not mean approving what has been done. It means taking seriously what happened and not minimizing it. It means not forgetting because it's important. It means drawing out the sting and the memory that threatens to poison our entire existence so we can be free. It involves trying to understand the perpetrators. It means understanding persons taught to hate at a young age. Persons abuse themselves and acting out of that abuse. So have empathy for your perpetrators. Forgive them, God, for they know not what they do." End quote. Indeed, forgiveness does not necessarily mean forgetting, and reconciliation is not always possible. Forgiveness does mean, however, trusting judgment to God, as hard as that might be. And this is only possible sometimes from the grace that comes from God and God alone. A precious blood spirituality is a spirituality of reconciliation. And through his ministry, his life, his death on the cross, through the shedding of his own very precious blood, Christ offers all persons a way to live in the circle of God's love and to invite others to claim that their own place in that same circle by forming communities of hope. Communities of hope. As we approach his precious blood and precious blood at this Mass, we reflect. How is the precious blood of Christ asking you to be an ambassador for reconciliation